everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So this is an extra video that we wanted to do this week. It was recommended to us by Space Forest. They had suggested that we do kind of a top 10 board games because we play a lot of games. So what we decided to do was games that we love that have a fantasy or sci-fi or horror angle to them. So this just isn't the funnest games ever made. This is games that kind of fit the theme of our channel, which I think is super fun. I didn't put them in any order. We came up with 11 games, and of course that'll lead up to many other games. But these are the 11 games that we play that have science fiction or fantasy or horror leanings. So the first one in the stack here, once again, not in any order, is Dune. This game is super fun. It was originally an Avalon Hill published game. We used to have a copy of it, but I don't have that original copy anymore. But fortunately, they reprinted it like this, which is super great. This game is amazingly fun. It's a game that's pretty easy to learn, but is rather complex. It's a war game. It's got a map of the planet Arrakis of Dune, and of course you've got which faction you want to play, all kinds of intrigue. It's a really wonderful game, which I highly recommend. Second in the pile is Mutant Chronicles. Now I picked this game. This is a game from my past. It's a very hard game to get, but I did want to bring it up. It's just a dungeon crawler. All you do in this game is move your little guy around the different spaces and try to kill monsters, right? And there's hundreds of games like this. Gloomhaven is probably the most complex and the most successful of all of them. But I love this game so much because it's the first one we played that has a campaign mode, so that literally your characters get better as you go through the different tiny missions, which is so neat. You gain experience points, you gain money, there's a store that you go to buy better equipment. Your experience points give you better dice to roll so that your equipment does more damage or whatever, it blocks more. It's really wonderfully well done. They did do a Kickstarter for it a while back. I got that. I actually got 2 copies of it because I love the game so much. And of course, as is true with Kickstarters, it added 1,000,000 components to the game. We haven't played it very often because it became so complex. I mean, if you can get into that game, if you have the time to play 6 or 7 adventures and really decide I'm going to be the Brotherhood or I'm going to be this or that and really get into it, it'll be incredible. You will be entirely addicted, and the options that you'll have will just be insane. But we haven't had the time to do that yet, of course. We will eventually. I love the game. But there's so many other dungeon crawlers. Gloomhaven Descent is an excellent one. They just redid Hero Quest, which is super fun. Right? If you do Hero Quest, I recommend that you play with the optional rule that you don't roll to see how far you go. Your guy just has a certain amount of movement. I think that's a little funner rather than rolling a 1 and being disappointed because you can't do anything that turn. But yeah, dungeon crawlers. I go for Mutant Chronicles, but there's so many out there. Next up, we have Starfarers of Catan. So we also have Star Trek Catan. They're both space versions of Catan. Catan is a super fun, super basic game. It's a great family game. This is a space version of it, which I really love. The Star Trek version is great. Another space version, of course. But I highly recommend that for families, of course. All right, next up we have Martian Rails. So there is a group of train games that are called Empire Builder. And this is one of those. This is an empire builder game. And the beauty of this game is you lay out this huge map. It's got mountains, it's got water, all that kind of stuff. And you have a crayon. And you pay for your track and then draw your track where you want it. And it's such a fun, tactile experience. Now, we grabbed Martian Rails, of course, because it's about space, so that's cool. They have the American continent, they have the African continent, they have Japan. I mean, there's so many of these games out there that are all empire builder. But the reason I grabbed this one specifically is because we were able to get Ray Bradbury's signature on this, because a lot of the locations on this are taken from the Martian Chronicles. So that's super fun, and he was very glad to sign it for us. Dana knows, I think it is his agent, and through him, she was able to get his signature before he passed away, which was really, really cool. But it's a great game, you know, without all that. Even if you're not playing Martian Rails, it's a great game. Although I do specifically like this map quite a bit. So that's a recommendation. Next up, and this is a big one for us, is D&D, of course. The new books are going to come out in September, and that should be really cool. The rules aren't changing. The 5th edition rules are still the rules, but the new Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master Guide and Monster Manual are going to be a lot better designed, I believe. They've had a long time to take a lot of suggestions, and I feel like those new versions of the book are really going to be worth it. But, of course, D&D is huge. Another huge one that we had to bring up is Magic the Gathering. This is just a pre-release pack, which we haven't opened yet, but it's a fun way to draft. Pre-releases are super fun if you want to go play with physical paper. That's the only way we do physical paper now, because we play MTG Arena, which is incredible. It's a free-to-play version of Magic the Gathering. They are releasing cards constantly into the game. There's already a huge ton of cards to choose from, and you can play people from all over the world. It's really, really good and very affordable. If you like Magic at all, or if you like these kind of collectible card games, if you play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or whatever, definitely you should be playing Arena. It's a blast. It's a true blast. Okay, next up on the list here is The Crew. So this is a trick-taking game. If you play card games with your family, if you guys like to play Hearts or whatever, I highly recommend this. It's super fun because it's a cooperative game. So you'll each get dealt a hand, just like Hearts or whatever, and then it will say, you'll have this book of quests, and the quest will be something like, the first player has to win a trick with the blue 2, which is really, as you know, if you play trick-taking games, a very difficult thing to do, because the 2 is so low, right? Almost all the cards in blue will take the 2. So for you to have to win with the 2, you all have to work together to make sure that everybody else is out of blue, so that when the blue 2 is played, nobody can follow suit, so they all lose and 2 takes the trick. And you all have to work together to do that. But the key is you can't talk. You cannot speak to each other. You just have to know they need to take the 2. What do I have to do to make sure that when that 2 comes out, they get it? Very cool. Very, very well-designed, cool game. Highly recommend it. All right, next up is Arkham Horror. They originally called this a living card game. They're not doing that anymore. Now it's just the card game. This is the 2nd edition. This game's brilliant. It's a lot like Magic in the sense that you build your deck and then you use it over and over again, But the neat thing about this is there's a bad guy deck, and that can vary. So there's all kinds of different adventures in this world where you take your little good guy deck, and the bad guy deck is just out there, and you have to play against it, which is very, very fun. This is good for multiple players or just solo play. If you just want to take your deck and put the bad guy deck out there, that's super cool. So it's an excellent game. And of course, they also have Lord of the Rings, which I have in this stack as well. I'm going to pull this one up. Same company, same basic concept, but it is different enough that I love both of them. And in fact, we also have the superhero game. I didn't put the superhero game over here because I don't really consider superheroes as part of our thing, although maybe it is. I don't know. But Marvel Champions is good as well, right? All three of them are good. They're all Fantasy Flight. But these two I really like. At this point in time, I think this one's my favorite. But this one I'm really intrigued with lately. So maybe they'll, I don't know. Dana loves this one. So yeah, they might switch places. I'm not sure. But that's fun. Okay, now we've got the Star Trek deck building game. So I picked this one because it's a deck building game, of course. Now, Dominion is the deck building game. If you want to get into deck building is really fun because all you do is get a tiny stack of cards, and then on your turn, you use those tiny cards to buy better cards so that your deck gets better and better. And you have so few cards to start with that when you discard them, you have to reshuffle them and draw them again. Right? But you added that one really good card. So you hope that you draw it, but it may still be down here, right? And your deck just gets better and better until you win. And that's what this is, the Star Trek deck building game. I do not believe that this game is as good as Dominion, but it is so cool to get data for your deck or to get Spock for your deck. You know what I mean? It's such a cool idea to have these characters on a Dominion style game that we still love this. This is an excellent game. It's just that Dominion's probably better. If you really just want a good deck building game, get Dominion, right? Good, but this is fun. It's super cool. And last but not least, we have the giant war game Eclipse. Now, Eclipse, it's called Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy, and this is the newest version. I highly recommend that you get the newest version if you get this. And the same thing is true for Twilight Imperium, right? If you're going to get Twilight Imperium, get the 4th edition. Twilight Imperium is, in my opinion, much more complicated than Eclipse. And that's why I grabbed Eclipse for this list. I feel like Eclipse is a lot more straightforward. It's easier to learn. It's still complex. It's a giant, sprawling war game. It's going to take your entire table, and it could take 5 hours to play, right? It's one of those. But Twilight Imperium is guaranteed to take all day. It's a very complex, crazy game. And this one is a little more toned down, and I kind of appreciate that. So personally, if you're trying to decide between the two, I'd go for this one. But they're both great, obviously. They're both great war games. All right. Well, that's the list of games that we play that are in this genre. I know there's hundreds of other amazing games out there. In fact, if you guys know of games that you really love, drop them in the comments because it'd be fun for us to check out new things as well, of course. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content. We primarily deal with films and books, but every once in a while stuff like this comes up as well, of course, just for fun. But make sure to subscribe and have a great day.